The third time it happened, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call my best friend. I didn't pour a glass of wine and stare at the ceiling the way I had the first time, or sit in the bathtub with the water running cold the way I had the second time. The third time, I sat in the passenger seat of our car in the parking lot of a house we were never going to own, and I watched my husband grip the steering wheel with both hands, and I made a decision. I was going to find out who was doing this to us. I didn't know, sitting in that parking lot on Clearwater Drive on an April evening with the for sale sign still in the yard and the maple tree visible through the fence, the one Dominic had already planned the deck around. I didn't know that the answer was going to be sitting across from me at Sunday dinner in 6 days. I didn't know it was going to be someone who had hugged me at my wedding, someone who called me sweetheart, someone who had sat across from us repeatedly and said, "The market is so crazy right now. You two just need to be patient." My name is Sarah Okafor. I'm 34 years old. I'm a title examiner and escrow officer at Landmark Title Solutions in Columbus, Ohio. My entire job is reading the paper trail that property leaves behind. Every deed transfer, every LLC registration, every registered agent, every name hidden inside a corporate shell. I find the thing underneath the thing. I do it every single day. For 4 years, I didn't think to do it for myself. That ends today. Stay with me. Because what I found, sitting at my own desk, in my own office, on an ordinary Tuesday morning in October, is something I still don't have the right word for. Betrayal is too small. Sabotage is accurate but cold. What my mother-in-law did to us had a shape that was almost architectural. She built walls we couldn't see and called it love. I'm going to show you the blueprints. Subscribe if you haven't. Drop a comment right now. Just your city, just where you're watching from. I want to know who's in the room with me tonight. My name is Sarah Okafor. I examine titles for a living. I should have examined this one 4 years ago. Marcus and I started saving for a house 11 months after our wedding. Not because anyone told us to. Not because of a timeline we'd agreed on. Because one evening in March, Marcus came home from work and said, "I drove past a house today on Fernwood, 4 bedrooms, yard, porch, the kind of house I want to live in." And I said, "Then let's start saving." That was the beginning. We opened a separate account, named it genuinely the house account, the way you name things when you're still optimistic enough to think naming them makes them real. We set up an automatic transfer, $1,500, first of every month. No exceptions. We didn't touch it for holidays. We didn't touch it when the car needed new brakes. We cut back on everything that didn't feel essential and a few things that did. At the end of year 1, $18,000, not enough. Year 2, $34,000, getting there. Year 3, $58,000. We started looking at listings. Year 4, the spring before the first offer, $61,000. A pre-approval letter from our lender. A realtor named Greg, who had been in Columbus residential real estate for 19 years, and who told us on our first meeting, "You're well positioned. Market's competitive, but you're competitive too. We'll find something." Greg was right. We found something. We just couldn't keep it. The first house was on Millbrook Lane. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a kitchen that needed updating but had good bones. The kind of house that rewards the people willing to put work into it. We toured it on a Saturday morning. Marcus walked through every room twice. I stood in the backyard for 4 minutes doing the specific mental math of someone imagining their future in a space. We submitted our offer that afternoon, asking price, pre-approved, clean. Greg called it one of the strongest offers he'd submitted in 2 years. 38 hours later, my phone rang. Greg said, "I'm so sorry. The seller accepted another offer. All cash buyer, no contingencies. Closing in 2 weeks. All cash, no contingencies, 2 weeks." I had been in the title industry long enough to know what that profile meant. An investor, an LLC, someone with liquidity that a normal buyer couldn't match. It happened. The market was brutal. I told myself that. That evening, Patricia called. Patricia Okafor, my mother-in-law, 62 years old, 5'4", with a voice calibrated by decades of practice to land just at the intersection of warmth and authority. She called Marcus first, the way she always did, and then asked to speak to me. "Sarah, sweetheart," Marcus told me, "I'm so sorry. These cash buyers are just everywhere right now. It's not fair to regular families. It really isn't. She paused. The pause had timing in it. Yeah, I keep thinking the area near us in Dublin is just so lovely. The schools, the safety. I know it's a little above what you've been looking at, but maybe if you stretched a bit. We'll keep looking, I said. Of course you will, she said. I just want what's best for you both. I believed her. That was my first mistake. The second house was on Ashford Court. This one I loved more than the first, which made the losing harder. 3 bedrooms, renovated kitchen, a reading nook off the master bedroom that I sat in for 8 minutes during the tour, imagining reading in for the rest of my life. Marcus found a garage workshop. We were already dividing the house in our minds before we left the driveway. We submitted a strong offer, above asking, pre-approved, clean. 36 hours later, all cash buyer, no contingencies, 2 weeks. I was starting to feel a pattern forming, and not a conspiracy, just the specific despair of a housing market that seemed designed to defeat the people who needed it most. Every article I read confirmed it. Cash buyers, institutional investors, LLCs snapping up residential inventory. Nothing personal, just the market. Patricia called that evening. Same warmth, same sympathy, almost, it would later realize, the same script. It's that market. It just keeps getting more impossible. Dublin really is worth looking at. We found a listing, actually, 3 bedrooms. I can send it to you. We're okay, Patricia. Thank you. I know you're okay. I just want you close. Is that so terrible? She laughed when she said it. The laugh that made the wanting you close feel like affection instead of architecture. I told myself it was affection. That was my second mistake. The third house was on Clearwater Drive. I don't need to tell you how much we wanted it. You already know because you've been building to it with us. The 4 years, the account, the 2 losses. You know the specific desperation of someone who has been disappointed twice and is trying very hard not to want something too much to protect themselves from a third loss. 4 bedrooms, a backyard with a mature maple tree, a front porch that caught the afternoon light in a way that made you want to sit on it every evening for the rest of your life, walking distance from the elementary school, the kind of house where you can see the whole version of your future. We offered $9,000 above asking, pre-approved, clean. Greg said it was the strongest offer he'd ever put together for us. 41 hours later, all cash buyer, no contingencies. I sat in the parking lot on Clearwater Drive and I looked at the maple tree through the fence and I did not cry. I made a decision. Somewhere between the first loss and the third, my grief had quietly converted itself into something harder and more useful. I was going to find out who was doing this. Before I tell you what I found, I need you to understand Patricia Okafor, not hate her. Understand her. Because if you hate her too early, you'll miss the most terrifying part, which is how reasonable she always seemed. Patricia was widowed 8 years ago when Marcus's father, Edward, died of a heart attack at 61. They had been married for 34 years. By every account, Marcus's, the relatives, the neighbors, who always mentioned how devoted they were. Edward and Patricia had a good marriage, traditional in structure. Edward worked, Patricia managed the home, and Marcus. They raised 1 child together. 1 child. That detail matters. When you have 1 child and you lose your husband in the same decade, the gravitational math of your emotional life becomes very simple. There is 1 person left who is yours. 1 person who represents every investment, emotional, financial, temporal, you've made over the course of a life. 1 person whose proximity to you is the difference between a life with purpose and a life that is simply duration. I am not saying this to excuse what Patricia did. I'm saying it because I've spent a year trying to understand how a woman who genuinely loves her son could do this to him. And the answer is that she doesn't understand love and possession as different things. She never has, and nobody in her life ever made her learn the difference. And Patricia's performances of warmth were so consistent that cataloging them in retrospect feels almost unfair. Because in isolation, each one was lovely. She remembered birthdays without being reminded. She brought food to our apartment twice a month, containers labeled in her handwriting with heating instructions. She asked about my work with the specific attentiveness of someone who had done their homework. How's the Henderson file going? Wasn't that the one with the easement issue? She made me feel seen. That was the mechanism. Make the person feel seen. Make them feel included. And they will tell themselves the story that makes you the good guy. The first time I noticed something was off, I filed it incorrectly. We were at Sunday dinner. Marcus and I drove to Dublin every other Sunday. A rhythm established so early in our marriage that it had the feeling of law, and Patricia was showing us photographs of a property she'd purchased. Just a small investment, she said. Something to put Edward's money to work. She flipped through the photos. A modest 3-bedroom on the east side. Nothing remarkable. Smart, Marcus said. Dad always said real estate. He did, Patricia said. She put the photos away with a small, satisfied smile. Real estate never lies. I noted the phrase, filed it under charming, moved on. The second thing I noticed was the Sunday evening calls. Marcus called his mother every Sunday evening, had done so since his first week at college, a habit established by Patricia with the specific genius of someone who understands that habits formed early become needs felt later. 37 years of Sunday calls. The calls range from 15 minutes to 45. Marcus always felt better after them. He would come to the phone slightly tense from the week and leave it lighter, more settled. I asked him once what they talked about. Everything, he said. Work, the week, whatever's going on. Do you tell her about house stuff? Sure, she asks. Every week? He looked at me. She's interested, Sarah. She wants us to find something. I let it go. The third thing I noticed was what Patricia did at the end of every house we lost. And I mean the timing specifically. She called within hours, not the next day. Hours. Before Marcus had a chance to process, before we'd had time to be disappointed together, Patricia was there, warm, sympathetic, redirecting. Dublin! Near me. Just look at Dublin. Every time. A therapist I saw briefly during year 3 told me, the thing about covert control is that it's invisible until it isn't. And the moment you see it, you can't unsee it. October of last year was the moment I saw it. Yeah. The Tuesday started like every other Tuesday. 8:15 a.m., my desk at Landmark. Coffee left, files right. The title search software opened to the day's first case. A residential transfer on the east side. Standard chain of title. Nothing flagged in the preliminary. I pulled the ownership history, current deed holder, Millstone Property Solutions, and LLCs. Routine. LLCs in residential real estate are everywhere. I cross-reference them as standard procedure. Check the registered agent, the filing history, any anomalies in the corporate record. I typed the LLC registration number into the Ohio Secretary of State database. Registered agent, Patricia R. Okafor. I read the name twice. Then I read it again. Then I did the thing you do when a result is so unexpected that your brain attempts to process it as a data entry error rather than a fact. I cleared the field and typed the registration number again, slowly, making sure each digit was correct. Same result. Patricia R. Okafor, Dublin, Ohio, registered agent for Millstone Property Solutions, LLC. I sat very still. The office sounds continued around me. The printer, a phone ringing at the front desk, 2 colleagues talking in the break room. And I was completely still inside all of it, the way you go still when something reconfigures while you're standing in it. Then I typed Millstone Property Solutions, LLC, into our internal cross-reference system, the database that pulls every property transaction in Franklin County associated with a given entity name. The results loaded. 11 properties. I started scrolling. The 6th entry, 1,847 Millbrook Lane. Purchase date, March 14th, 3 years ago. Purchase type, all cash. Purchase price, $412,000. Closing, 14 days. I stopped breathing. Millbrook Lane, our first house, the one with the kitchen that needed updating and the backyard I had stood in for 4 minutes. My hands were flat on the desk. I could feel my own pulse in my palms. I scrolled. The 8th entry, 3301 Ashford Court. Purchase date, September 8th, 2 years ago. All cash, $391,000. 14 days. Ashford Court, the reading nook, the garage workshop Marcus had already planned. I think I made a sound. Not loud, the kind of sound that is mostly exhaled air and shapes itself into a word only by accident. I scrolled. The 10th entry, 714 Clearwater Drive. Purchase date, April 22nd, 14 months ago. All cash, $438,000. 14 days. Clearwater Drive. The maple tree. I closed the database. The screen went dark. I checked later, 4 minutes and 30 seconds before I opened it again and ran the search a second time. Then a third. Same result. Same 3 addresses. Same registered agent. Patricia R. Okafor. Here's the thing about finding evidence in your professional capacity of something that has destroyed your personal life. The professional training kicks in first. Before the grief, before the rage, before the specific shattering of realizing you have been systematically deceived by someone who calls you sweetheart, before all of that, the professional reflex engages. Document everything! I opened a new file on my desktop. I named it The Properties. Over the next 20 minutes, I pulled every record associated with Millstone Property Solutions, LLC. All 11 transactions, every deed, every filing, every registered agent confirmation. I cross-reference the purchase dates against our offer submission dates, which I had in my personal email archive going back 3 years. The gap between our offer and Patricia's winning bid. Millbrook Lane, 38 hours. Ashford Court, 36 hours. Clearwater Drive, 41 hours. Fast enough to be reactive. Fast enough that she had known in advance that we were bidding. Someone had told her. I thought about the Sunday evening calls. Marcus, lighter after each one. She asks about everything. The calls that happen to fall within the window between our offer preparation and our offer submission, because Greg always took 2 to 3 days to finalize and submit, and Marcus always called on Sundays, and we had always looked at houses on weekends. The pathway was so simple, so obvious in retrospect. Marcus had told his mother, in the innocent habit of 37 years of Sunday calls, which house we were about to offer on. Patricia had taken that information, called her broker, and moved first, every single time, with cash that moved faster than any mortgage could follow. She had used Edward's money. The inheritance Marcus believed was held in trust for his future. She had taken his future and used it to block his future. And then she had called him 40 hours later, warm and sympathetic, and redirected him toward Dublin. Toward her! I sat at my desk for a long time after the documents were compiled, long enough that my colleague Jin knocked on my glass partition and asked if I was all right. Fine, I said, just a complicated chain of title. She had no idea how true that was. That evening I did not tell Marcus. I know that surprises people when I tell them. He was my husband. I had found evidence that his mother had been systematically sabotaging our lives. The obvious thing was to show him immediately. But I had worked enough disputes, enough cases where a premature confrontation destroyed evidence, inflamed situations, and produced outcomes worse than the original injury, to know that the moment you reveal what you know determines everything that follows. Tell Marcus that night, in the raw shock of the discovery, and what you get is an emotional confrontation that Patricia can deny, minimize, and recover from. She'd had 37 years of practice managing Marcus's emotional responses to her. I needed something she couldn't manage. I needed it to be undeniable, in public, with witnesses. I called a real estate attorney named David Park the next morning. David had handled title disputes for our firm and was, more importantly, someone I trusted completely. I walked him through everything: the LLC, the registered agent, the 3 properties, the timeline. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. Sarah, he said, this is extraordinary. I know. The timeline alone makes this look like targeted interference. If you can establish she had advanced knowledge of your offers, I can, I said. The Sunday calls. Marcus will confirm the pattern when he understands what it means. Has he seen this? Not yet. He needs to see it before this goes anywhere formal. And Sarah, he needs to see it in a way where he has time to process before any confrontation. Because Confronting Patricia without Marcus fully on your side is just a fight she'll win by default. I know, I said I'm working on the timing. What's driving the timing? David asked. I told him about the Birchwood Place listing, the 4-bedroom on the northwest side that had appeared in our property alerts 2 weeks ago. Slightly above our range, I'd told Marcus when I sent him the link. I'd been watching to see if it would come on Millstone's radar. 3 days ago, it had the 11th property on Millstone's Franklin County transaction list, 4421 Birchwood Place. Purchase date, October 3rd, all cash, $449,000. Closing, 14 days. Purchased 10 days after I'd sent Marcus the listing. He had presumably mentioned it on a Sunday call. She's still doing it, David said. She's having a housewarming party for it, I said. November 12th. She invited the whole family. The silence on the phone had a particular quality. That's your timing, David said. Yeah, that's my timing, I said. I told Marcus on a Thursday evening. I chose Thursday deliberately. Far enough from Sunday that there had been no recent call to Patricia, close enough to the housewarming that he would have time to process, but not so much time that the anger cooled. I made dinner first, not as manipulation, and because I needed us to be at the table, side by side in a normal domestic moment before I dismantled the architecture of the last 4 years. I waited until the plates were cleared. Then I put my laptop on the table, opened the properties file, and turned the screen toward him. I need to show you something, I said. I need you to look at all of it before you say anything. Marcus looked at me, the specific look of someone who reads the seriousness in a person's voice before they understand the words. Okay, he said. I walked him through it. The LLC, Patricia's name as registered agent, the 11 properties, then Millbrook Lane. I watched his face. He read the address, read the purchase date, read the price. His expression did something complicated. Not surprise, exactly. The expression of someone who has been half-sensing something for years and is now being handed the other half. Ashford Court. His jaw tightened. Clearwater Drive? He put his hand flat on the table, the same steadying gesture I had used at my desk on the Tuesday morning. I put the timeline in front of him last, our offer dates, Patricia's purchase dates, the 36 to 41-hour windows, the Sunday calls listed in chronological order. He read it for a long time. Then he said very quietly, "She asked me every week." I know. Every Sunday. How's the search? Did we see anything new? Every single week for 3 years? Yes. And I told her. He said it the way you say something when you understand, in the middle of the sentence, what it means. I told her everything. Which houses we were looking at. When we were about to offer. I thought... He stopped. You thought she was interested? I said. Because she made you feel like her interest was love. It's not... I looked at him for a moment. I think she believes it is, I said carefully. I think Patricia has never understood that there is a difference between loving someone and needing them to need you. I don't think she sees what she did as harm. I think she sees it as keeping her family together. Marcus stared at the timeline. She used my dad's money, he said. Yes. Dad left that money for... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Edward Okafor had built his estate with the specific intention of giving his son a foundation, a down payment, a safety net, the practical expression of a father's wish that his child's life be easier than his own. Patricia had taken that intention and inverted it, used the foundation money to prevent the foundation from ever being laid. Marcus closed the laptop. He was very still. What do you want to do? He said. She's having a housewarming party for Birchwood, I said. November 12th. The house she bought last month. I opened the laptop again and showed him the Birchwood listing, the one I'd sent him in September with the note slightly out of range. He recognized it immediately. That's the one with the yard that backs up to the greenbelt. Yes. His voice was very flat when he said, she bought it after I mentioned it. 10 days after. He looked at the table for a long moment. She invited Aunt Carol, he said. Uncle David. The Hendersons from next door. Pastor Williams. I know who she invited, I said. That's why it's the right place. Marcus looked at me. In 4 years of marriage, I had learned to read the specific geography of his silences. The ones that meant he was deciding, versus the ones that meant he had already decided and was building language for it. This was the second kind. "I'll drive," he said. The house on Birchwood Place was genuinely everything. I had known that from the listing, the dimensions, the lot, the school proximity. Standing in front of it on a Saturday afternoon in November with the fall light hitting the porch, the specific way it hits houses with western exposure, I understood it more completely. This wasn't just a property to Patricia. This was a statement. She had bought the most desirable house we'd identified, and she was throwing a party in it, and she had invited her entire community to witness her ownership. She didn't know we were coming. Marcus had not told her. We heard the party before we reached the door. Voices, music, the particular atmosphere of a gathering that has found its rhythm. Patricia had hired a caterer. I could see the table set up through the front window. White linen, champagne flutes, the effort of someone who wanted this to look like a triumph. It was going to look like something else entirely in 20 minutes. Marcus rang the doorbell. Patricia opened the door. I want to be precise about her face in that moment because it's important to understand that her initial reaction was genuine joy, unperformed, unguarded. She had not expected us, and our arrival read to her as the specific validation of a son showing up for his mother's moment. Her face opened completely. "Marcus!" She pulled him into a hug. Then she turned to me. The full embrace, both arms, the hold that telegraphs you are family to anyone watching. "Sarah, sweetheart, I'm so glad you came. Come in, come in. You have to see the kitchen." She was already moving, already narrating the tour, the proud homeowner performing for an audience she had carefully assembled. "Mom," Marcus said. She turned. Something in his voice, one syllable, her son's voice, and she registered it the way a musician registers a note that is slightly but unmistakably wrong. "What is it?" We need to show you something." I had timed it deliberately. The kitchen was where Patricia had positioned herself as host. The catered table, the champagne, the gathering point. The kitchen was also where Aunt Carol and Uncle David had been standing when we came in, where the two neighbors from Patricia's block were admiring the farmhouse sink, where Patricia's friend from church, Lorraine, was refilling her glass. Witnesses, not selected, just present. I set the folder on the quartz countertop. The folder was organized the way I organize title files. Tabbed, chronological, every document printed clearly. David Park had reviewed it. Everything was verified, source-cited, and undeniable. I opened to the first tab. "Millstone Property Solutions, LLC," I said. My voice was completely level, professional, the voice I use when I'm presenting findings to a client. "You've been running it for 4 years. Patricia looked at the document, the LLC registration with her name in the registered agent field. The calculation happened behind her eyes. "How much does she have? What can I explain? What is the best angle here?" "That's my investment company," she said, light, dismissive. The tone of someone explaining something obvious to someone who has misunderstood. "Marcus has always known I invest in real estate." "He didn't know about these 3, I said. Second tab. I placed the deed for 1847 Millbrook Lane on the counter. "This is the first house Marcus and I offered on. 3 years ago, March. You purchased it 38 hours after we submitted our offer. All cash, $412,000. Patricia's eyes moved to Marcus. He was looking at the deed. She shifted register from dismissive to reasonable. "That property came to me through my broker. It was a good investment." "Your broker had the listing," I said. "You had the offer. You knew we were bidding because Marcus told you on Sunday." Third tab. 301 Ashford Court. "The second house, September, 36 hours. Something in the room shifted. Aunt Carol had moved closer without appearing to. Uncle David had set down his glass. Patricia said, "Sarah, this is—" "I'm not finished," I said. Fourth tab. 714 Clearwater Drive. The third house, April, 41 hours. I put the timeline beside the 3 deeds, our offer dates in one column, Millstone's purchase dates in the second column, the Sunday call dates in the third. "Marcus called you every Sunday evening," I said. "Every week for 3 years he told you which houses we were looking at when we were about to offer. Within 36 to 41 hours of each offer, Millstone Properties purchased the house. All cash, no contingencies. Faster than any pre-approved mortgage can move. I looked at her. You weren't unlucky for us. You were the market. The kitchen was completely quiet. Patricia looked at Marcus. Her expression, and this is the part that I have replayed more than any other moment, her expression was not guilt. It was something much more complicated. It was the look of someone who genuinely believes they have been doing the right thing and is encountering for the first time irrefutable proof that the people they love do not agree. She said, Marcus, sweetheart, she's making this sound like, Mom. His voice was very quiet. Don't. I was protecting you. The market is volatile. Those were our houses, he said. You don't know that. Any buyer could have. Patricia! I kept my voice level. I'm a title examiner. I know how to read a chain of title. I know how to follow an LLC to its registered agent. I know how to cross-reference purchase dates against offer timelines. This is my job. I put my hand on the folder. I've been doing this for 10 years. This is the most clearly documented pattern of targeted interference I have ever seen, Aunt Carol said quietly. Patricia, is this... Carol, stay out of this. $412,000, Marcus said. $491,000? $438,000. That's Dad's money. Patricia's face changed. Not guilt, the first genuine emotion I had ever seen from her that wasn't filtered through performance. I was going to give it back, she said. When you found the right place near us, I was going to help. I was going to contribute to the down payment. It was always going to be... Near you, Marcus said. Yes, near me. Is that so terrible? You're my son. You're all I have. We're a family, Mom, Sarah and I. That's my family. I'm your family. You sabotaged us, he said. The flatness in his voice was the worst thing in the room. Not rage, something colder. The voice of someone who has moved past the thing that would have required shouting. For 4 years. You sat across from us at dinner, and you expressed sympathy, and you redirected us to Dublin, and you were the reason we were failing. Patricia looked at her son with the specific desperation of someone watching the version of events they've constructed for themselves come apart. I didn't want to lose you, she said. You should have thought of that, Marcus said, before Clearwater Drive. He picked up the folder. He squared the documents, every page aligned the way you close a file when the work is done. He handed the folder to me. Lorraine, from the church, quietly set her champagne glass on the counter and moved toward the back door. The neighbors at the farmhouse sink had not moved. They were very still in the way of people who are trying to be invisible. Aunt Carol said, Patricia. Just the name, just the weight of it. Patricia was looking at her son. Marcus said, I'll be in touch, not Sunday. We walked out of the kitchen. Through the living room, past the catered table, the champagne, the white linen triumph. Out the front door of 4421 Birchwood Place. The November air hit us on the porch, the yard, the green belt visible past the back fence, everything the listing had promised. Marcus stood on the porch for a moment and looked at it. It's a good house, Line, he said. It is, I said. Come on, he said. Let's go find ours. We offered on 1122 Ferndale Street the following Sunday morning. Not Patricia's Sunday. Ours. A new Sunday. I am aware of the symbolism, and I am not embarrassed by it. Full price. Pre-approved. Clean offer. Submitted at 11 to 12 a.m. At 4:47 p.m., Greg called. Congratulations, he said. It's yours. I was standing in the kitchen of our apartment. The apartment we had rented for 4 years while our house account accumulated, while the market moved against us, while an LLC with a familiar registered agent bought every home we reached for. I sat down on the floor, not because my legs failed, because the floor was there and I needed something solid and close and real underneath me while I absorbed the specific weight of something that had been 4 years in coming. Marcus found me there 3 minutes later. He sat down next to me. We sat on the kitchen floor for a while. Ferndale, he said. Ferndale, I said. The legal process that followed Patricia and Millstone Property Solutions took 13 months, involved 3 attorneys, a formal complaint to the Ohio Real Estate Commission, and a civil proceeding that I am not going to detail fully because it is partially still ongoing. What I can tell you, David Park established, through documentation and testimony, a clear pattern of targeted purchase interference using advanced knowledge obtained through a relationship of trust. The 3 properties, Millbrook Lane, Ashford Court, Clearwater Drive, were sold by Millstone within 10 months of the proceedings beginning, under conditions that reflected both legal pressure and the specific motivation of a woman who was, by then, trying very hard to demonstrate good faith to her son. The money from those sales went into an account. Marcus has not decided what to do with it yet. That's his to decide. What I can also tell you is this. Patricia did not lose her son. This is, depending on your perspective, either the most human outcome or the most frustrating one. Marcus calls her on Thursday evenings now. Not every week. Some weeks he doesn't. The calls are shorter. The topics are different. He no longer tells her about the house, the plans, the future. Not because he is punishing her, but because he has learned at 37 the specific discipline of deciding what to share versus what to protect. It's the hardest thing he's ever done. He tells me that sometimes, on evenings when he's been thinking about it. She genuinely thought she was doing it for me, he says. That I know, I say. That almost makes it worse. Yes, I say, it does. This is marriage. Holding the complicated thing together with the person you chose, not collapsing it into a simpler story. Although we moved in on a Friday in September. The closing was on Wednesday. I reviewed every document myself 3 times with the specific thoroughness of someone who has learned not to assume that the paperwork is clean. It was clean. Our names, our property, our chain of title, clear and unencumbered from the first deed forward. Owner of record, Sarah and Marcus Okafor. No LLC, no registered agent, no all-cash buyer in the wings. Just our names, exactly as they should have been 4 years earlier. The movers came Friday morning. Marcus carried boxes. I handled the furniture placement with the focus of someone who has been mentally arranging this house for 4 years and intends to get it exactly right on the first try. By early afternoon, the movers were gone, and it was just us in a house that smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Marcus found the backyard. There was a maple tree, younger than the one on Clearwater Drive, still establishing itself, maybe 6 years old. Marcus stood next to it for a long time. The way he stands next to things, he's still deciding. Deck, I said. Give it a few years first, he said. Let it get settled. I understood that he was not only talking about the tree, and I examine titles for a living. It is, at its core, the work of establishing truth, not the truth of what people say they own, but the documented, verifiable, legally unambiguous truth of what the record shows. Chain of title. Every transfer, every encumbrance, every name that has ever been attached to a piece of land. What I learned, sitting at my desk on an ordinary Tuesday morning in October with a cross-reference that reconfigured 4 years of my life, is that the most important things in your life also have chains of title. Every relationship, every act of love or control, every pattern of behavior, every story someone tells you about who they are. You can read those too, if you know how. The method is the same as a real estate title search. Go back to the beginning, follow every transfer, note every irregularity, follow the registered agent to the name underneath. Patricia's chain of title, followed all the way back, told the story of a woman who had never been asked to distinguish between love and ownership, and who had therefore spent 62 years treating them as the same thing. I am not the right person to fix that. I was never going to be. What I could do, see, what I did was document it, print it, tab it, put it on a quartz countertop at a housewarming party for a house she had no business owning, and then walk out the front door with my husband into a life that is finally ours. If you're renting right now and the market keeps moving the finish line, it was this one's for you. If you've ever been in a room with someone who performed love while dismantling your future, this one's for you. If you're saving every month for something that keeps getting taken, keep saving. Keep your documentation. Learn who's in the chain of title. The record doesn't lie. Subscribe. Drop a comment. Just your city. Just where you're watching. Tell me if this story hit somewhere close to home. I read every single one. The third time it happened, I stopped crying. I started looking.